Welcome back. My name is Simiu LV and I'm glad to be the one to take you through the second lesson of poetry for half term. Today we are going to look at the title. Previously we had learned a few tricks on how to read the poem better so that we have a deeper understanding of the subject matter. Speaking of the subject matter, how much did the title of the previous lesson reveal about the subject matter of the previous lesson? Our poem today is titled A Taxi Driver on His Death. A taxi driver on his death. When with prophetic eye I peer into the future, I see that I shall perish upon this road, driving men that I do not know. This metallic monster that I now dictate, this docile elaborate horse that in silence seems to simmer and strain, shall surely revolt some tempting day. Thus I shall die, not that I care for any man's journey, nor for proprietor's gain, nor yet for love of my own, nor for this do I attempt the forbidden limits. For this defy the traffic man and the cold cell, risking everything for the little more. They shall say, I know who pick up my bones. Poor chap, another victim of the ruthless machine, concealing my blood under the metal. The catch is on the word taxi. If that word taxi would not have been there, then we would have been talking about just a driver, a matatu driver, a bus driver. We could be talking about something different. But because of the word taxi, we knew definitely that the persona, the subject, the speaker in the poem is a taxi driver. At least we got to know what kind of, it gave us a perspective of what kind of person we are talking about. Ni mtu tu anabeba watu wawili watatu kwa gari yake ndogo, mwendeshaji wa gari ndogo, dereva wa gari ndogo, bas. That was very illuminating. Today, I want us to focus more on that. How does the title reflect the subject matter? So we are looking at the title vis-a-vis the subject matter. The subject matter is the most important part of the poem because once you understand it, everything else will fall in place. How you will comment, the language used, you'll be able to comment on it well because you know what the subject matter is. Persona, you'll get to the persona because you know what the poem is about. So knowing what the poem is about is overall. It is what helps you to place the other elements of poetry accordingly. So let me read today's poem, and I don't want to read the title so that you see for yourselves what the title does to a poem. Yet some of you, as soon as you get the papers, read the poem below and answer the questions that follow. Quickly, you don't even care who wrote the poem and what the title is. You just start with line 1. The poem keeps knocking you out because you ignored one basic step, one simple step that would have given you a deeper understanding of the poem. It would have opened your eyes. It would have opened your eyes. It would have made you discover that this poem is not as difficult as it looks. So, I don't want to read the title. I'll start with the first line. You know the poem. You know the poem and probably half term. Before you came for half term, this is the poem you did for your Cycle 1 exams. The owner of yam peels his yam in the house. A neighbor knocks at the door. The owner of yam throws his yam in the bedroom. The neighbor says, I just heard a sound kere kere, that's why I came. The owner of the yam replies, that was nothing, I was sharpening 2 knives. The neighbor says again, I still heard something like bee sound behind your door. The owner of the yam says, I merely tried my door with a mallet. The neighbor says again, what about the huge fire burning on your hearth? The fellow replies, that is the owner of the yam, I am merely warming water for my bath. The neighbor persists. Why is your skin white when this is not the harmattan season? The fellow is ready with his reply. That is the owner of the yam. I was rolling on the floor when I heard of the death of Agadapidi. Then the neighbor says, peace be with you. Then the owner of the yam starts to shout. There cannot be peace unless the owner of food is allowed to eat his own food. Karibu niongeza hapo choke. So, we can easily conclude that this poem is about a selfish neighbor. This poem is about a social vice, that is selfishness. Or even a bothersome neighbor, because this is about two neighbors. So we can easily say that this poem is about social vices like selfishness. But lo and behold, when we bring in the title of the poem is Famine. It opens your eye and you see deeper. That selfishness is not just selfishness that is a character, ya mtu. No. It has been brought about by the fact that there is great famine in that land. There's great famine. So people are hoarding food. People don't want to share the little they have. And if a neighbor akiona tu moshi kwako amefika, which is also not very good, although we don't want to blame the owner of yam only. So, this poem, it is the title that puts you into the right setup. It shows you the right setup for everything. Because you might want to say it's about selfishness, but you must tie it to the famine. Famine has made people selfish. So this poem is about effects of famine. Don't you think so? And one of them, cultivate social injustices, cultivate conflicts, and one of them is the one that we've seen. There's a conflict between two neighbors. One who seems to be selfish and the other who seems to be bothersome. Right? Now, so before you read the poem, look at the title. Look at the title. Connect with the title. Before you go to the first line, think about the title. What comes in your mind when you hear the word famine? Those are the things you shall expect in the poem. First of all, you need to know what is famine. What is famine? Some people would love to say famine is a period of extreme hunger. That is a period of acute food shortages. Others will want to say a period of poor food security. You want to use, there's something about food and famine. Famine inamaanisha kwamba watu hawakulima vizuri, kwa hivyo msimu huo there's no food. Look at what normally happens when we have extreme drought. Mvua haijanyesha for long, famine follows. Tukikuwa na floods in third world countries, of course, tukikuwa na floods, again, what follows? Extreme hunger, and that is famine. So, famine inaletwa na the fact that subsistence farmers have not been able to grow crops. Climate change, the climate was not favorable for farming at that time, and so no farming went on, and therefore watu walibaki wakiwa without food. You see, the owner of the yam, yeye ni mkulima wa yam. Yam gives us the economic activity ya watu ambao the poem has been derived from, or the poet alikuwa na watu gani in mind? People who engage in farming, right? So, because season ya harmattan, the reason that the season that precedes the harmattan season is normally a rainy one. It is a rainy season, but there's no food. So inamaanisha kwamba kuna extreme hunger, and that is why we arrive at famine. So what is famine? Again, when you are thinking of the title, and in this case ours is famine, consider what are the causes of famine. I've talked about it. briefly. I've talked about it briefly when I was illustrating the famine, the Harmattan season, and the season that precedes it. You see, it's connected to climatic conditions, changes in climatic conditions. So what caused this famine that you will experience or you will see in the poem? Beware that some of these things will come out. Maybe some will not even come out. Then, what are the effects? What are the effects of famine? How does famine affect people? We have seen. It increases selfishness. It brings conflicts among neighbors. It becomes a point of contention. It brings conflicts, right? Then, you should also consider how to curb, how to control famine. Will it be in the poem? Do you see any of these things in the poem? So you see, once you have brainstormed and tried to associate with the title, what should you expect in the poem? You should go to the poem with a level head now, knowing that famine manifests itself in the tenets of famine. Ziko nyingi. Kuna the causes, kuna the effects, and how to prevent the famine. So you go to the poem knowing that that is what it will be about. So when you read the lines, you know you are home. It's famine. Ninja. Ni watu hawana chakula. So you are home. You know why this is happening. You have a better chance of understanding the poem if you think about the subject, if you think about the title earlier, if you think about the title and brainstorm on it. What I would want to know, what do you think? The death of Agada PD, that person, is it associated with, can we say that famine causes mortality? Mortality rates zinaenda juu because of famine. Could we say that? Though they didn't tell us how he died, it's a death in a period of famine, great hunger. So I don't know what you think about that. Feel free to share in the comment section. So let's read the poem again. The title, Famine. The owner of yam peels his yam in the house. A neighbor knocks at the door. The owner of the yam throws his yam in the bedroom. The neighbor says, I just heard a sound kere kere. That's why I came. The owner of the yam replies, that was nothing. I was sharpening 2 knives. The neighbor says again, I still heard something like bee sound behind your door. The owner of the yam says, I merely tried my door with a mallet. The neighbor says again, what about the huge fire burning on your hearth? The fellow replies, I am merely warming water for my bath. The neighbor persists, why is your skin white when this is not the Harmattan season? The fellow is ready with his reply. I was rolling on the floor when I heard of the death of Agada PD. Then the neighbor says, peace be with you. Then the owner of yam starts to shout, there cannot be peace unless the owner of food is allowed to eat his own food. From the poem, what evidence is there that the poem is about famine actually? Look at the relevance of the title. What evidence is there that the poem is about famine? Think about that. Again, if you want to think aloud, drop it in the comment section. Find me on WhatsApp or 724094472 and discuss if you feel like. Then we shall say that this poem is about effects of hunger. The owner of the yam hides his food when a neighbor advances, when a neighbor comes, right? Because he does not want to share. Why? It is a period of hunger, great hunger. So the poem is about effects of famine. Although, if you say the poem is about selfishness, we shall still score. But when you'll be explaining the selfishness, we'll know what has caused it. It is not out of character ya mtu peke yake. No, it has some external force, and that is famine. So one of your illustrations will surely, one of your illustrations will indicate that that vice has been brought about by the scarcity of food, acute food shortage. From the poem, what has brought about the famine? Think about it again. What brought the famine? What do you think? Why do you think people wako na njaa? Yet it is not even the Harmattan season. And we know the Harmattan season is the driest, it is the coldest, and you know, it's a health hazard actually in West Africa. Then are there effects of famine in the poem? Look at some lines like the one which says your skin, why is your skin white? You know, that shows paleness, malnutrition. It shows that watu wako na poor health. One effect of famine. Nini njaa imefanya watu wanakaa namna gani? Imeaffect watu vipi? Number 2, starvation. You can see the owner of the yam does not want to share with a neighbor, and the neighbor won't leave him alone. Lazima ajue hiyo chakula iko wapi. You know. So watu wana starve, watu wako na njaa. Then it fuels social conflict na tunaona between the owner of the yam and his neighbor. The owner of the yam by the time wanamaliza is shouting angrily. Then mortality, that's what I was talking about. Increased mortality rates. Agada PD amekufa. We don't know if because alikufa njaa, lakini during a period of hunger kama hii watu wanakufa sana. So those are some of the signs that enyewe this poem is about famine and its effects. Although the poem does not reveal how the famine can be prevented or how it can be controlled, but in a nutshell, what are we saying? The poem is about famine and its effects. Or if you don't want to give the subject matter, you say the poem is about 2 neighbors during a period of famine. Famine leads to selfishness. The owner of the yam does not want to share it. He throws the yam in the bedroom when a neighbor knocks. The neighbor insists that there is food in that house, but the owner of the yam insists that there's none. The owner of the yam gets impatient and starts to shout. Why can't he be allowed to eat his own food? Also, like I did in the other lesson, I'm leaving you with some questions. Feel free to share with me on WhatsApp or 724094472, or even the comment section after this video. You can leave your answers there. I'll look at them, and if there's need that I get in touch, I sure will. Do me one favor. Read the poem again. Read the poem again and look at the choice of words. What are some of the words that resonate with the subject matter, which is famine and its effects? We know already that it is famine and its effects. I said, though, you can talk about selfishness, but you will still go back to the cause of that selfishness, which is famine and its effects. Assess the choice of words in that poem and highlight how many are associated with famine and its effects. In our next lesson, that is what we shall be looking at. How do you pick a line, then you look at the content words. What are they suggesting? The next line, pick the content words. You see, already you can see some pattern in how the jargon is around which topic. You can easily know that once you pick your subject matter, it is correct, because the choice of words in the poem are associated, are jargon for that subject matter. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in again. I'm glad that you have a positive mindset, you have a positive attitude towards poetry, and let's nail it this year. We want English to have as many A's as possible. This nonsense of us not having A's should stop. We only have 2 years, but you sit for exams only once. Wewe you only have 1 year, mimi I have 2 years. 844 haitaisha kama hatujapata A's zetu mingi. Kwani zinaenda wapi hizo A's? We must get those A's. We must fetch those A's. Thanks for tuning in. Bye bye. I'm your favorite teacher, Simiyu LV. See you tomorrow, same time.